Let's talk about last week's game first. So, one thing that stood out to me, we walked away with a victory, but I think that we underestimated the Rams potentially. I mean, at least before the season started, we thought, this is potentially a tank candidate. This is maybe someone in the sweepstakes to, pass the baton from their Matthew Stafford quarterback to perhaps a newer one. At minimum, be a top 3 pick or something. They flipped that script on its head, it feels like. Their first game was a victory. Their second game was much closer than I thought it would be. What did you think going into the game, and what were your thoughts coming out of it?
So going into it, divisional games, I never expect blowouts. I don't think it's even if like when they play the Cardinals this year, right? Like no matter how bad the
Yep.
roster might be in comparison, division games are just so hard to. There's no logic or reason, right? Like it's just one of those things where you have to just expect it's going to be a dogfight until proven otherwise. And I think that the Rams are a team where, as long as they have a quarterback that's healthy and McVay's there, they're going to give you problems. And I think maybe the overlooking aspect stemmed from the fact that last year Matthew Stafford clearly wasn't right and wasn't healthy. And we had no indication that he would look as good as he's looked in terms of just like health. His elbow clearly looks okay. They lost the game, but I'll be honest. Like I think right now Matthew Stafford's the best quarterback in the NFC when he's playing the way he's played the first couple of weeks. So yeah, like they're a team that's going to be competitive, but ultimately, like football games are 4 quarters for a reason, right? And as good as the Rams played in the first half, great teams make adjustments. The Niners adjusted and found a way to win. And if not for a bizarre decision at the end of the game, it would have been another double-digit win to start the season. So yeah, it's just one of those things I think where you can't ever go into divisional games expecting there to be a blowout, no matter how bad the other team might look on paper.
Totally. And I completely agree with you on Matthew Stafford. I think it was one of those situations where you might look at the stat line, you might see 2 picks, but to me, that it didn't feel, although it was on paper exactly what happened, it didn't feel true to the story when you just looked at those statistics. I think that when you see him perform on the field, you know that he still has gas in the tank. And the fact that he's able to propel, receivers like Puka Nakua to 147 yards off of 15 receptions. I mean, it's a joint effort. It's not just Puka's talent. It's folks like Matthew Stafford who are able to deliver the ball and do it at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's one of those things where it's really hard to get, uh, perspective in the moment when you're watching your defense, giving up big chunk plays and you're watching the Rams put up points. But like realistically, giving up, like again, they got 23. Uh, Most teams aren't kicking that field goal at the end. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that, they pretty much held them to 20. Um, 20 points for any team in the NFL. If you hold another team to 20 points, like, it's not this incredible, you're going to talk about it for years to come defensive performance. But that's a solid defensive performance. And especially when you're only giving up really 6 points in the second half, even though, they had the 17 in the first half. Like, it's just one of those things where you have to be able to take a step back after and look at the entire picture and not get caught up in the fact that, the Rams had a couple of good drives early on and made some guys that maybe weren't household names, as you mentioned beforehand, look really good. And, Puka Nakua is one of those guys where they look like they hit on a late round pick. 49ers fans obviously know what that looks like. And maybe the Rams were due. The football gods felt bad that all the late round talent was going to Northern California. So they're like, hey, we'll bless you up with a good receiver here and try to even the score a little bit. But, ultimately, I thought the Niners, it wasn't this like dominant win, but they did what good teams do, and good teams find a way to win divisional games. They find ways to win games on the road, and they're 2-0 with 2 games in the road in hand. Like that's a huge deal when you start getting to the later part of the season, and they're now playing more home games than road games, and you can have the comfort of playing at Levi's, knowing you took care of business when you weren't at home.